The soldier woke with a sharp pain shooting through his head. He groaned, slowly opening his eyes, trying to adjust to the dim light around him. The air was cold, but not the kind of cold that would freeze you. It was a sterile chill, one that seemed unnatural, almost suffocating. He blinked a few times, trying to clear the fog in his mind. Where was he? The last thing he remembered was the battle, the explosion, the shouts, the fire, and then nothing. His eyes scanned the room. It wasn't the cramped, dusty quarters he was used to. The walls around him were smooth, metallic, and cold, with strange symbols glowing faintly on the surface. The bed he was lying on was soft, too soft. It didn't belong in any military camp he knew. He sat up, his body heavy with the weight of confusion and the remnants of fatigue. A sharp pain throbbed in his ribs, but nothing seemed broken just. Bruised, his thoughts raced. Am I dead? Did they capture me? His hands fumbled for any weapon, any familiar tool, but there was nothing. No rifle, no knife. Just him in this strange, unfamiliar space. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, his feet touching the cold, polished floor. The room was small, but efficiently organized. One wall was covered with strange equipment. He didn't recognize screens, buttons, and panels that hummed softly. The other side had shelves lined with bizarre objects, some glimmering in the soft blue light. His mind was still struggling to make sense of it all. Then there was a sound. Soft footsteps. He froze, his body instinctively tensing. He turned, his head toward the door, his heart pounding in his chest. He hadn't heard anyone approach, but there, standing just inside the threshold, was a figure. She wasn't human. At first his brain struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. She stood tall and graceful, her skin glowing with a soft, otherworldly light. Her hair was long and silver, shimmering like strands of starlight, falling over her shoulders in waves. Her eyes, though large, were the most striking. They were deep, violet, almost glowing, with a piercing intensity that seemed to look right through him. She was dressed in a tight, form-fitting suit that seemed to change color depending on the light, one moment dark, the next moment shimmering with iridescence. The soldier's hand instinctively reached for the air, but there was nothing to grip. He blinked hard. What kind of alien is this? The girl didn't speak. She only stood there, watching him with an almost unreadable expression. She tilted her head slightly, as if curious about him but not afraid. Her presence felt heavy in the room, like everything in it was drawn toward her, as though she controlled the space around them. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. The soldier couldn't move, couldn't speak. His mind was still, foggy, but there was one thought that kept echoing in his head. Who is she? What is she? Finally, she broke the silence. Her voice was soft, melodic, almost hypnotic, but there was a certain coolness to it, as though she wasn't entirely human herself. You are awake, she said simply, her words foreign yet somehow understandable. It was as though his mind had already translated them. The soldier opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. His throat was dry, and the only thing he could manage was a rasping cough. He looked around the room again, trying to make sense of his situation. The girl stepped forward cautiously. Her eyes never left his face, studying him like he was some kind of rare specimen. As she came closer, the soldier instinctively pulled back, his body tense. She noticed his movement but didn't seem to take offense. Instead, she continued toward him, reaching out with her slender hand, offering him something, a small glass of liquid, glowing faintly in the dim light. I was told you would need this, she said. The soldier eyed the glass suspiciously. The liquid inside looked strange, almost unnatural. He had no idea what it was, but his instincts told him to trust her. If she had wanted him dead, she could have already killed him. Or worse, left him to rot in this strange place. He reached for the glass and drank. The liquid was cool and soothing, with a taste he couldn't quite place. It flowed down his throat, easing the dryness, calming his body. Within moments, he felt a strange warmth spreading through him. His strength seemed to return, and the pain in his body began to fade. Thank you, he muttered, his voice still hoarse but stronger. The girl nodded. Her expression remained unreadable. I am here to help you. You were badly wounded. The ship's medical systems were able to stabilize you. You should feel better soon. The soldier's mind raced. Where am I? He asked, trying to piece together the fragments of memory. What happened? You are on my ship, she said, her voice calm, though there was something unsettling in her tone. You were found after the battle. I saved you. The soldier frowned. His memories were hazy, but something didn't add up. Her ship. His pulse quickened. What do you mean you saved me? Who are you? What do you want from me? The girl took a small step back, the slightest flicker of emotion crossing her face. I am your caretaker, she replied, the words sharp and precise. I am here to ensure your recovery. The soldier couldn't believe what he was hearing. Caretaker, he repeated, trying to make sense of it all. I don't understand. You're an alien, aren't you? She didn't flinch. Yes, she said simply, her voice unwavering. I am. The soldier looked at her, his mind buzzing with questions. But before he could ask anything more, she spoke again. Rest now. We'll need your strength. He wanted to protest, but his body was already giving in to the warmth and exhaustion. Soldier's eyelids fluttered, and before he knew it, sleep overtook him once more. As he drifted off, one question lingered in his mind. What had he stumbled into? With that thought, the room faded to black once again. The soldier's eyes opened again, though this time the disorientation wasn't as strong. He sat up slowly, feeling less weak, his body regaining some of its strength. His thoughts were still foggy, but now there was something else, a new awareness creeping into his mind. He wasn't alone in this strange place anymore. The girl was still there, standing by the door, watching him. This time her gaze was softer, though no less intense. Her violet eyes seemed to study him like an artist admiring a newly painted canvas, curious, thoughtful, and just a little too calculating. She didn't speak immediately, but her presence filled the room. Like the calm before a storm, he rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off the remnants of sleep, but something about the way she stood there so still, so silent, made his stomach tighten with unease. There was a quiet tension in the air, something unspoken but understood. Who are you? The soldier's voice was steady, though his mind was still racing. He wasn't sure what he expected her to say, but the words that came out of her mouth were unexpected. My name is Alira, she said, her voice soft but undeniably confident. I am ... a servant of sorts. He blinked, trying to process her words. A servant? To whom? And why had she saved him? Why was she here, on this strange ship with him? Why are you helping me? His voice came out more urgently than he intended. He wasn't sure what was more unsettling, the fact that she was an alien, or that she seemed to care about his well-being. Alira took a small step closer, her movements graceful, fluid-like. She was gliding across the floor. She didn't flinch, didn't seem offended by his directness. She simply watched him, her gaze unwavering. Because you are valuable, she said, her voice low. You are a soldier? Yes? A fighter? He nodded slowly, his confusion growing. What's that got to do with anything? Why am I here? Eyes flickered, just for a moment, with something the soldier couldn't quite place. We're chosen, she said, her words carefully measured. It's not just because of your strength, but because of what you represent. What do I represent? The soldier's heart skipped a beat. He had never been one for philosophy, but there was something about her words that felt weighty, important. It was as if she wasn't just talking to him as a soldier, but as something more. The war, she said softly, almost as if it pained her to say it. You are a symbol to my people, to the ones who resist. He frowned, his mind spinning with questions. Resist? Resist? What? He felt like he was in the middle of some cosmic game that he didn't understand the rules to. You're with the enemy, he said, his voice tightening. Aren't you? Alira didn't flinch, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, something sad, something resigned. I am not your enemy, she said quietly. I am a slave, just like the others. Slave. The word hung in the air between them like a heavy curtain. The soldier felt a knot twist in his stomach. He had seen slaves before on Earth, in his world, but they were always victims, always forced into servitude. He leaned forward slightly. Then why are you helping me? He couldn't understand it. She was a slave. What possible reason could she have for aiding a soldier from the other side of the war? Illyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked over to a small table near the wall and picked up something he hadn't noticed before, an object that looked like a small, glowing crystal. She turned it over in her hand, then looked at him, her expression unreadable. "I am bound by my duty," she said, her voice steady but layered with something deeper. "But duty doesn't always mean loyalty, not when you've seen what your side is capable of." His mind raced. What was she saying? "There are forces at play here you cannot understand," she continued, her voice becoming more intense. "Not yet, anyway. But you will, when the time comes." The soldier's head was spinning. He didn't know if he should trust her or if he should keep his guard up. Everything she said was confusing, too much like a riddle wrapped in mystery. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that, in some strange way, she was telling the truth. "You still haven't answered me," he said, frustration creeping into his tone. "Why am I here? Why did you save me?" She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. Then, with a slow exhale, she placed the crystal back on the table and turned to face him completely. Because she said quietly, her voice like a whisper of wind, "You are not just any soldier. You are the key. The key to what?" His voice was barely more than a whisper, but the weight of her words made his pulse quicken. Illyra's gaze softened, but there was no hint of warmth in its tone, only a deep, quiet sorrow. The key to everything. The war, the future, the fate of us all. The soldier's breath caught in his throat. The key. What could she mean by that? Before he could ask more, she turned away, her silver hair shimmering in the dim light. She said simply, "You'll need your strength for what comes next." And with that, she was gone, leaving the soldier alone with 1,000 unanswered questions swirling in his mind. He had no idea what was happening, or what had just started. But one thing was clear, his life was no longer his own. The war. The aliens and Illyra, they were all part of something much bigger than anything he could have imagined. And as he sat there, alone in that strange room, one question kept repeating in his mind. The soldier woke to an unfamiliar sound, soft, rhythmic tapping. He blinked against the brightness of the room, trying to make sense of the situation. His muscles still felt sore, but there was something else, something new. His mind was clearer, the fog of confusion beginning to lift, but he still couldn't fully grasp where he was, or what had happened. What was Illyra's role in all of this? Why had she saved him? And why was she so important? I sat up slowly, testing his strength. The bed beneath him was firm, the soft sheets still warm from his body. He looked around the room, noticing it. It was quieter than it had been before, almost peaceful. Then he noticed her. Illyra was standing by a small window, her back to him. She was staring out at something. The view outside was a vast expanse of stars and galaxies, but there was no telling how far they actually were. For the first time, she seemed vulnerable. Distant, less like a guard or a servant, and more like someone who was lost. The soldier hesitated before standing, his body protesting the movement. But he had to understand he needed answers. "Illyra," he called softly, stepping closer to her. She didn't respond at first, her attention locked on the stars outside. As if searching for something out there in the darkness, her eyes shifted to meet his. And for a brief moment, he saw a flicker of something human. Something that made her seem less like an alien and more like someone he could relate to. "Do you ever wonder?" she said suddenly, her voice soft but heavy with meaning. "If we're just pieces in a game we don't understand?" The question took him by surprise. He had expected her to be distant, formal, maybe even hostile. But instead, she was asking about fate, about the purpose of it all. The soldier frowned, unsure of how to answer. "A game," he repeated. "What do you mean?" She turned fully. Toward him now, her eyes intense, as though she was looking into his very soul. "The war," the sides, the power struggles. We think we have choices, but sometimes I wonder if we're all just pawns, driven by forces beyond our control, chosen without knowing why. He felt a chill run through him. She's not just talking about the war, she's talking about her life, about everything she's been through. I don't know what to believe, the soldier admitted, his voice low. But you've helped me. You've saved me when no one else would. Why? Illyra took a slow step closer, her violet eyes never leaving his. Because you have a role to play, she said simply. Maybe, just maybe, I do too. The soldier studied her, trying to piece together the puzzle. There was more to her than met the eye, more than just an alien slave. There was a depth. To her words, a certain heaviness that suggested she was hiding something big. She wasn't just helping him out of kindness. There was a reason, a purpose behind her actions. What do you mean? He asked. What role do you have? She hesitated, a brief flicker of uncertainty crossing her face before she regained her composure. I'm not just a servant, she said quietly. I am part of a resistance, a group that wants to change things. End the war, end the suffering. The soldier's breath caught in his throat. A resistance? The word echoed in his mind, each syllable heavier than the last. Could she be telling the truth? Resistance? He asked, his voice rising with disbelief. What does that even mean? Against who? Against the aliens. Illyra's expression hardened slightly, but there was no anger in her eyes, only a quiet resolve. Not all aliens are the enemy. Not all of us want the war to continue. Some of us are fighting for peace, fighting to stop those who are pulling the strings, the ones who started it all. The soldier felt a rush of conflicting emotions. One hand, he was a soldier, trained to fight for his country. On the other hand, he was beginning to realize that not everything was as it seemed. Not every alien was a faceless enemy. Illyra wasn't his enemy, and in a strange way he felt more connected to her than to the people he once fought for. So, you're telling me there are more like you? More aliens who want peace? He asked, his voice skeptical but tinged with hope. Illyra nodded. Yes, we exist, but we are few, and we are hunted. The weight of her words sank in. The soldier stared at her, his mind racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that his entire understanding of the war, his life, everything he thought he knew, was unraveling in front of him. Could he trust her? Could he trust these aliens? He wasn't sure, but one thing was clear: he had to know more. If there was a way to stop the war, to end the bloodshed, then he had to be part of it. You want me to join your cause? He asked, trying to process the gravity of the situation. Illyra's eyes softened. I want you to understand, that's all. We need people who can see the truth, people who are willing to fight for what's right, not just what they've been told is right. The soldier felt a surge of determination. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than any soldier could have imagined. He had been pulled into something much larger than a simple battle. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was part of a story that was still being written. And the choices he made now would change everything. I'll help, he said, his voice firm. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm in. Illyra gave a small nod, her eyes meeting his with a quiet understanding. It won't be easy. We have enemies everywhere, but together we have a chance. The soldier looked out the window, his mind still reeling, but for the first time since waking up, he felt a sense of purpose. He wasn't just a pawn in a game. Anymore, he was making his own moves, and with that thought, the journey into the unknown began. The soldier stood in front of Illyra, his mind racing with possibilities. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of machinery and the quiet tapping of his boots against the cold floor. He had barely processed everything she'd told him about the resistance, about the war, about the larger forces at play, but one thing was clear: he couldn't stay here forever. He glanced out the window at the swirling stars beyond. If he was going to make a move, it had to be now. The weight of the situation settled on his shoulders. If Illyra was right, there was a chance to do something bigger than he ever imagined. But that meant they had to escape. They had to leave. This place together? We can't stay here, the soldier said, his voice steady but urgent. Illyra turned to him, her gaze soft but calculating. You're right. They'll come for us. It's only a matter of time before they realize you're awake. And once they do, this ship will be crawling with guards. He felt a chill run down his spine, the thought of being hunted like a wild animal. Hitting close to home, his fingers clenched into fists, but he quickly forced himself to calm down. Panic wouldn't help them escape. Strategy would. I need a way out, the soldier said. We need to find a ship, something I can fly. Illyra's lips curled into a faint smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. You're brave, but you're not thinking this through. The escape routes here are tightly controlled. There's only one path off this ship. If we try to make a run for it through the main corridors, we'll be caught. No one escapes that easily. He frowned, trying to process her words. But he wasn't about to back down. Then we'll go through the vents, he said, his voice gaining confidence. I've been trained for this. I know how to navigate confined spaces. If we can access the ventilation system, we can avoid detection. We'll slip right out of here. Illyra tilted her head, studying him closely. You have experience with vents? She asked, her tone almost amused. I have experience with a lot of things. The soldier replied dryly, a grin tugging at the corner of his lips. I've been through much worse. She seemed to assess him for a long moment before nodding. It's risky, but it's our best shot. I'll help you get to the maintenance deck. From there, we can access the vent system. I know a few places that aren't heavily guarded. We'll need to move fast, though. The soldier's heart quickened, and this was happening. He was about to break free from this place. But as much as he wanted to believe it was going to be easy, a cold knot of doubt settled in his stomach. Illyra was his only ally, and though he trusted her at least somewhat, there was still a chance she could betray him. After all, she was part of the enemy, and the soldier had been taught to question everything. Once we're out, where do we go? He asked, his voice more guarded now. Where's your resistance? How do we find them? Illyra's eyes flickered. With a mixture of determination and hesitation, I'll take you to a safe house first. It's not far from here, but it's not an easy place to get into. The resistance is scattered, and we'll have to rely on the network to contact them. But if we survive the next few hours, we'll have a chance. The soldier exhaled slowly, feeling a new weight settle in his chest. They weren't just escaping from a ship anymore. They were escaping from an entire system that had been designed to track and control them. It would take more than a few vents and hidden passageways to shake off the pursuit of their enemies. We can't do this alone, he said, his voice firm now. We need weapons, supplies, a plan, a real plan. Illyra looked at him, her gaze intense. There's a weapons cache hidden within the maintenance decks, but getting to it won't be easy. The guards will be on high alert soon, and they'll be looking for us. We can't fight our way out unless we're prepared. The soldier's eyes narrowed. We need to find it then. No more wasting time. He moved quickly to the door, his mind already working through the steps. Illyra followed him, her pace calm but steady. She was always one step ahead, always calculating, always thinking ahead. Her calm demeanor was both reassuring and unsettling. He was starting to realize that Illyra wasn't just a servant or a member of the resistance. She was a survivor. As they moved through the narrow hallways, the soldier felt the weight of every footstep. They had to stay quiet, keep their movements precise. Illyra led the way, her steps light and controlled, while the soldier kept a lookout behind them. The ship felt like a maze, and every corner seemed to hold a new danger. Illyra paused in front of a maintenance hatch and glanced at him. This is it. Once we're inside, we'll have access to the ventilation system. The soldier nodded. Let's do it. He held his breath as she entered the code, her fingers flying across the hidden panel. With a soft hiss, the hatch opened, revealing a narrow, dimly lit corridor that smelled of oil and metal. The soldier's heart pounded in his chest, but his focus remained sharp. This was the moment of truth. They crawled through the narrow tunnels, their bodies contorted, moving carefully so they wouldn't make a sound. Every shift in the air, every hum of the ship felt like it was amplifying their presence. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. There was no room for error. The soldier glanced at Illyra, watching her carefully. She was unwavering, leading them forward with determination. He had no doubt she had done this before. But now, for the first time, the soldier felt the weight of his decisions. If they made it out of this, it wouldn't just be about surviving. It would be about something bigger. About changing the course of a war he never even knew he was a part of. They were getting closer. And the soldier realized as they neared the weapons cache that this wasn't just an escape. This was the beginning of something much greater. Something that could change everything, and there was no turning back now. The air was thick with tension as the soldier and Alira crouched in the shadows of the maintenance deck. The hum of the ship's systems was louder here, a constant drone that filled every inch of the metal walls around them. Alira's eyes flickered toward the darkened corridor ahead, her senses sharp, alert. The soldier could feel the pulse of danger in his own chest, his heart beating faster with every passing second. They had made it this far, but now the real challenge was about to begin. The weapons cache Alira had mentioned wasn't far, but there was a catch. Guards had been deployed to sweep the lower decks. And the closer they got to the armory, the higher the risk of being caught. Every shadow seemed to move like a predator, and every sound made him flinch. Alira motioned for him to follow her silently, her hand held out to guide him. He took a deep breath and moved with her, every muscle in his body poised for action. They reached a small junction in the hallway, where the air vent shafts opened up like a web of passageways, giving them a choice of routes. Alira stopped at the junction, her expression unreadable. "We need to take the lower level," she whispered. "It's faster, but it's more dangerous. The upper levels are heavily monitored. If we're spotted up there, it's over." He nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Lead the way," he said quietly, voice steady despite the gnawing feeling in his gut.
How big they crawled into.
The narrow passage, their bodies squeezing through the vents as the ship hummed around them, oblivious to their presence. Alira led with ease, her movements fluid, almost graceful. The soldier, though trained for combat, was less used to such confined spaces, but he forced himself to remain calm, following her every step. Every flicker of movement outside the vents made his stomach tighten. Suddenly, Alira stopped. Body stiffening. The soldier could see the glint of her violet eyes as they darted across the space ahead. A light blinked on the far side of the vent shaft, signaling the presence of a guard just around the corner. Alira motioned for him to stop. She pointed downward, toward a vent cover that could be used to sneak past. He followed her silent instructions, his mind focused on one thing, staying undetected. The sound of footsteps echoed through the shaft, growing louder as the guard drew closer. His breath caught in his throat, but Alira remained unfazed. She reached for a small device at her waist, a tool that looked like a metal chip, and attached it to the wall. There was a faint hiss, and the guard's footsteps seemed to slow, the signal being intercepted by her device. "Go," she whispered, her hand already pulling him forward. They scrambled through the vent, moving swiftly, silently. The soldier's heart hammered in his chest as they reached the edge of the shaft, just outside the armory doors. Lara paused, listening intently, her ear pressed against the cold metal. "They're on their way," she murmured. "We don't have much time." The soldier's mind raced. If they were caught now, it was over. They'd never make it out. "Let's do this," he said, his voice low, but determined. He wasn't about to back down now, not after everything they had been through. Not after everything he had learned. Lyra nodded. With a swift motion, she punched in a code on the armory door's access panel. The metal door hissed open, revealing the cache of weapons inside. The soldier's eyes swept across the room, taking in the rows of futuristic firearms, energy blades, and grenades. The sight made his blood run cold, but this was their chance. They couldn't leave empty-handed. "Take what you can carry," Alira ordered, her voice urgent. "We need to move fast." He wasted no time. Grabbing a plasma rifle and a few grenades, he quickly secured them to his body, his hands working quickly but precisely. Lyra was already choosing weapons for herself, a small bladed weapon and a pack of grenades. She was efficient, her movements quick and practiced. But there was something in her eyes now, something darker, more determined. Suddenly, The loud whine of a ship-wide alarm echoed through the corridors, cutting through the quiet like a knife. The soldier's heart skipped a beat. "They've found us," Illyra said, her voice now hard and resolute. "We have to move now." The soldier barely had time to react before Illyra was already heading for the exit, her pace quick and controlled. He followed close behind, his senses heightened. Every step they took echoed in the hallway, but they had no choice. The sound of footsteps and shouts grew louder, and the alarms blared through the ship. As they turned a corner, they ran into a wall of soldiers, armed, dangerous, and blocking their escape route. "Stop!" one of the soldiers shouted. "You're not going anywhere?" Illyra didn't hesitate. She reached for her energy pistol and fired. The blast hit the soldier square in the chest, sending him flying backward with a burst of blue light. The others rushed forward, but the soldier stepped into action, his plasma rifle roaring to life. "Move!" he shouted to Illyra, who was already a few steps ahead. They ran, their footsteps pounding in unison as they sprinted down the narrow corridor. The sound of chasing guards echoed from behind, but the soldier didn't look back. His focus was forward, on the only thing that mattered: escape. They reached another junction, a fork in the path. Illyra quickly gestured to the right. The soldier followed, his lungs burning from the sprint, his mind sharp despite the adrenaline flooding his veins. They had to keep ahead of the guards. They got caught now. They'd never get another chance. Illyra's eyes scanned the corridor ahead. Then suddenly, she stopped. She turned to the soldier, a look of urgency flashing across her face. "There's a hangar up ahead," she said, breathless. "We'll steal a ship." "A ship?" the soldier asked, his voice hoarse. Illyra nodded. "It's our only chance. We have to get there before they lock everything down." Without another word, they pushed forward, the sound of guards closing in louder and louder with every step. The soldier could feel the weight of what was coming. This wasn't just a battle for freedom, it was a fight for their lives. And they weren't going down without a fight. The hangar was dark, save for the flickering lights that barely illuminated the massive ships and machinery scattered around. Lyra and the soldier moved quickly, ducking behind a large rusted storage container to catch their breath. Sweat dripped from the soldier's brow, and he could feel his heart still racing. The adrenaline of their narrow escape pumping through his veins. They were so close, just a few steps away from freedom, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Illyra's eyes scanned the hangar, her body poised as if she could sense something the soldier couldn't. Her movements were graceful, almost predatory, but there was an undercurrent of fear in her posture. She was on edge. "We need to find the ship with the fastest engines," Illyra whispered, her voice low, her gaze never wavering from the shadows around them. "The longer we stay here, the higher the chances they'll catch up." The soldier nodded, trying to push aside the knot in his stomach. They'd been running for what felt like hours. There was a deep, gnawing hunger for freedom, but there was something else. Too, a feeling that the entire situation had shifted somehow, and he wasn't sure how to grasp it. "Illyra," the soldier began, his voice tentative. "You said you were part of a resistance, but I'm starting to wonder how deep this really goes. Who's pulling the strings? Who is the real enemy here?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes flickered to the soldier, and for the first time, he saw something different in her, something beyond the cool exterior she had shown him. Her expression faltered just for a second before she turned away, her gaze fixed on the ships. "In the distance, the real enemy?" she repeated, her voice colder now, almost distant. "You really want to know? You don't have the full picture yet, soldier." The soldier frowned. I had learned that when Illyra spoke like that, it wasn't just a statement, it was a warning. But something inside him urged him to press on. He needed answers, and he wasn't about to back down now. "Tell me, I need to know." "I'm in this now, Illyra. There's no turning back." She hesitated, her face tightening. Then slowly, she turned to him, her eyes locking with his in a way that made his stomach twist. "The war isn't what you think it is," she said, her words heavy with weight. "The aliens you've been fighting, some of them are just pawns, the ones controlling everything. The ones you don't see, they're not aliens. Not like me. They're something else, something far more dangerous." The soldier blinked, trying to process her words. His mind raced with confusion. "What are you talking about?" You mean there's something else controlling the war? But who? Illyra took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing as she stepped closer to him, her voice almost a whisper. The ones pulling the strings are called the Valion. They're a race of beings not bound by the physical laws, you know. They manipulate minds, control governments, and they've been doing this for centuries. You've been fighting their battles without even knowing it. Every war, every conflict, it's all been orchestrated by them. They thrive on chaos, on power. The soldier's blood ran cold. He had fought wars before, but this was something he couldn't comprehend. So, the entire conflict. It's been a game to them. They've been using us as their pieces. Illyra nodded grimly. Yes, and now, the Valion are trying to consolidate control over the galaxy. The resistance I'm part of, it's not just about fighting for freedom. It's about stopping them before they completely take over. But even we are divided. There are factions within the resistance itself. Some of us want to expose the truth. Others want to just defeat the aliens and move on. But it's bigger than that. The Valion want to remake everything. The soldier's head was spinning, race controlling everything from the shadows. He could hardly wrap his mind around it. He had always known that war was never just about one enemy, but this was something different. The soldier took a step toward her, searching her face for some sign of certainty. How did you get involved with this? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Illyra's gaze softened for a brief moment before she looked away, her expression clouded with a mix of regret and sorrow. You couldn't. Not until you understood. Not until you saw the bigger picture. I've been with the Resistance for years. I grew up on a planet destroyed by the Valion. I was taken as a child enslaved by their forces, but I wasn't just some victim. I was trained just like you. My mission was to infiltrate, to learn, to fight back. And when I found you, when I saw the potential for you to help us, I took a risk. I brought you in. The soldier felt a strange pang in his chest. He wasn't sure if it was pity or respect, but for the first time, he saw Illyra not just as an alien or a resistance fighter, but as someone who had been through hell, just like him. So, you've been using me? He asked quietly, his voice tight with suspicion. Illyra met his gaze, her eyes intense. Oh, she said firmly. I brought you in because you are more than just a soldier. You're a symbol. Who can lead this fight? But you need to understand the truth. You need to understand the Valion. The soldier's mind was spinning faster now, the pieces of the puzzle coming together in ways he couldn't have imagined. There were forces at play, far beyond his comprehension, and they were in the middle of something far more dangerous than a simple war. Before he could respond, a loud crash echoed through the hangar, followed by the sound of rushing footsteps. Illyra's head snapped toward the noise, her face hardening with determination. They've found us, she said, her voice cold as ice. Get ready. It's time to make our move. The soldier's heart skipped a beat as he looked at her. His body was already primed for battle, but now everything had changed. They weren't just fighting for freedom anymore. They were fighting to stop a force that could unravel everything. They knew, and as the footsteps grew louder, he realized one thing. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about saving the future of the galaxy from the shadows that threatened to swallow it whole. They had no choice but to face the truth, and it was going to be a fight like none they had ever seen before. The air in the hangar felt charged, as if the very walls were holding their breath in anticipation. Illyra stood beside the soldier, her stance unyielding, her eyes narrowed, scanning the rapidly approaching footsteps. The Valion, or their loyal forces, were closing in, and there was nowhere left to hide. They had only one option now: fight. Stay close, Illyra ordered, her voice low and filled with quiet resolve. The soldier nodded, his grip tightening around the plasma rifle. Had secured earlier, his heart pounded in his chest, but his mind was calm. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he wasn't just following orders. He was part of something bigger. He had a purpose that stretched beyond survival. Behind them, the doors to the hangar began to hiss open, revealing the looming shadows of several Valion soldiers. Their sleek armor gleamed in the dim light, their weapons raised and ready.
Ow.
The soldier knew they had no time to waste.
Ow.
The resistance had already been hunted for years, but this fight was different. This was their stand. This was their last chance. Lyra's face tightened as she turned to him. If we're going to do this, we do it now. There's no turning back after this. The soldier's pulse quickened, but his voice was steady. I'm with you. Lyra nodded, her gaze flickering to the distant ship at the far end of the hangar. The ship they would steal. The ship that would carry them to the Resistance's last stronghold. She knew the risks, the dangers, but the spark of defiance in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. There was no going back. Without another word, Lyra moved first, darting toward the center of the hangar, her blaster raised.
The soldier
Followed, his feet light but purposeful, his mind focused on one thing: survival. The first soldier fell with a crack of energy as Lyra fired, her aim precise. The sound of the shot echoed through the vast empty space, followed by the hiss of energy blasts as the remaining guards retaliated. The soldier's instincts kicked in, and he dropped to a knee, firing in quick bursts, his plasma rifle flashing. With every shot, the guards returned fire, but the soldier was already moving, always moving, his movements trained, precise as he ducked behind the nearest crates for cover. Lyra wasn't just fighting to survive, she was fighting for something much bigger. The soldier could see it in her every move. Her mission wasn't just to escape, it was to change the fate of the galaxy. The battle raged around them, the sounds of blaster fire and explosions filling the hangar, but amidst the chaos they made their way to the ship. It loomed in the distance, sleek and powerful, its engines humming with potential. As they neared, the soldier's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a vehicle, it was their ticket to freedom. "We're almost there!" Lyra shouted over the din of gunfire. "Get to the controls!" The soldier ran ahead, his body a blur of motion, his thoughts focused solely on reaching the ship's cockpit. He dove into the pilot's seat, his hands moving instinctively over the controls. The ship's systems blinked to life under his touch, and he felt the thrumming pulse of the engines beneath him. "We're almost there," Lyra repeated, her voice tinged with urgency. "Start the launch sequence. Now." With a final, steadying breath, the soldier activated the ship's thrusters. The ship hummed to life, its sleek frame lifting off the ground. The hangar doors began to close, but they were already airborne, the weight of the battle fading as the ship shot forward with a burst of speed. The soldier glanced to Lyra, her eyes focused, determined. There was no fear in them, only the unwavering resolve of someone who had fought, bled, and lived for this moment. She wasn't just a soldier, she was a symbol, a beacon of the resistance. As they soared into the stars, leaving the chaos behind them, the soldier's mind raced. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be. This was just the beginning. They had fought for their lives, yes, but they had also fought for something more, the chance to rewrite the future. Behind them, the ship that once held them captive now looked small, insignificant, a relic of the past. Ahead, the galaxy stretched, wide and unknown. The war had been a trap, and for too long, they had been its pawns. But now they were free. And for the first time in his life, the soldier felt a flicker of hope. They had a long road ahead. The Velion were still out there, lurking in the shadows, but they were no longer untouchable. The resistance was stronger than ever. And now, with the soldier by her side, Lyra had the one thing she had been missing, a real ally, someone willing to fight for the future. "Where do we go from here?" the soldier asked, his voice filled. With quiet anticipation, Lyra's gaze softened as she stared out the viewport, the stars streaking past them like 1,000 untold stories. "Wherever we need to. Together." As the ship pushed deeper into the vast unknown, the soldier realized that this journey was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. And this time, they weren't fighting to survive. They were fighting to change everything.